The gods Thor and Loki crossed the world in Thor's chariot, which was pulled by powerful goats. The gods had left for the kingdom of the giants, looking for taking part in new adventures. Before that, they stopped in a humble house, where the gods wanted to stay for the night. The gods were warmly welcomed by the villagers, but being poor, they had nothing to offer as food. Thor told them not to worry, because he would provide a bountiful meal. The god himself slaughtered his own goats and had their meat prepared for a meal that would honor any god. The god of thunder offered food to the dwellers who welcomed him, and then he said, "You can eat as much as you want. I only ask you to leave the bones unscathed." While everyone ate the delicious goat meat, Loki decided to do one of his pranks. He approached the hut's young resident, known as Tjalfi, and he told him, "There is no fairness at all in allowing Thor to keep all the delicious marrow which fill these bones just for himself. Such a delicacy would give great strength to those who eat it." The boy now wanted to try it. He waited until everyone was asleep and broke one of the bones to taste the marrow. The bones were then thrown over the skin of the slaughtered goats. The next day, Thor did a ritual and brought the goats back to life. However, one of the goats was now limping because its leg had been broken. Thor was enraged and grabbed his powerful hammer. "You bastards! I offered you plenty of food and just got betrayal as a return. Who did this?" Loki tried to conceal his smile. Tjalfi, regretting his action, confessed the crime. "Just give me one reason why I shouldn't destroy this house, together with those who live in it."
"Spare my family. They did nothing. Take me as your servant, so that I may pay my debt to the gods."
Thor was benevolent and decided to spare Tjalfi's family, and they now would have to treat his goats. While Thor, Loki, and Tjalfi departed to explore the land of the giants. Thor, Loki, and his new servant Tjalfi roamed through the inhospitable kingdom of Jotunheimer, the land of the giants. The intense cold forced them to look for shelter. The gods found what appeared to be a huge cave, and they went inside. The travelers tried to rest, but an immense noise trembled the earth. Thor stepped out of the cave to investigate the source, and from the top of a mountain, he noticed that a huge giant slept beside their cave, and his snoring shook the whole ground. The giant woke up, and he did not appear particularly threatful. Thor realized that the giant wore only one glove, while the other was actually the cave they were sheltered. The giant tried to pull on his glove, and Loki and Tjalfi fell from it. The huge giant introduced himself to the travelers. "I'm Skirmir, and if you wish, I can serve as your guide, while also carrying all your luggage." The gods accepted the offer. After all, they did not know the region that well, and having the opportunity not to carry their own goods would certainly be a great relief. Skirmir put everything inside his own bag and initiated the journey. The giant was now tired and decided to take a nap. Night came and the traveler started to feel hungry. They tried to open the sleeping giant's bag but failed. Unable to wake the giant, Thor, angered with hunger, grabbed his hammer and struck the giant's head with fierceness. After the blow, the sleepy giant said, "A leaf must have fallen on the top of my head. Well, it was nothing anyway," and went back to sleep. Dawn was around the corner, and the hungry travelers waited for the giant to wake up to finally eat their breakfast. But Skirmir was still asleep. The angered Thor hammered the giant's head with all his might. Such a blow could destroy any giant's head, but Skirmir just woke up as if he had been bothered by an insect. Thor was amazed by the giant's endurance. No way a creature could withstand such a blow. After waking up, the giant said, "Your destination is right there, where Utgaror is located, the place of my giant friends. There they call me soft and weak. I think it's now time for us to go." Thor and his fellows went to the giant's palace. The god was a little worried. If Skirmir was the little one, what would he find in Utgaror, the domain of the king of the giants? Thor, his servant Thjalfi, and Loki were all exploring the kingdom of the giants, and they finally arrived at the enormous castle of Utgaror. The Aesir gods entered the palace and encountered the huge giants who lived there. The one who stood out the most welcomed them.
"Welcome to my palace. I'm the lord of this palace. I have always heard that you Asgardians consider yourselves to be the greatest of all. How about we take part in a dispute? I can defeat you in any kind of competition you can imagine," said Thor with confidence. "Calm down, Odin's son. The first to compete will be Loki, son of the glorious giant Laufey."
Loki would face Logi, the giant's servant, to know who could eat the banquet on the table more quickly. Loki and Logi started eating all the food with incredible speed, and they both finished at the same time. Loki ate all the food, but the giant Logi ate even the bones, platters, and cutlery, so he was declared the winner. The servant Thjalfi also engaged in a race against a giant who was still a child. Thjalfi was one of the fastest men that ever lived, yet he had no chance against the hasty giant boy. "For you, mighty Thor, I pose 3 challenges. First, you should drink all the beverage in this horn at one go." Thor grabbed the horn with confidence, as drinking a lot was one of his skills. The god drank, and drank that salty liquid until he reached his limit. But he only managed to decrease the liquid that filled the horn a little bit.
"Ha ha ha! You drink like a maid. I'll make it easier for you. In this next race, you will have to lift my pet cat."
"You got to be kidding me," said Thor, approaching the cat. Much to Thor's surprise, the cat was incredibly heavy. The god of thunder managed to lift the cat over his head, but it could still touch the ground with its paws.
"It appears that the stories they tell about you are just legends, and you cannot lift a cat up. In your last ordeal, you must fight my foster mother."
That was when an old giantess appeared in the room. Thor felt offended for having to fight this old woman, but he decided to fight her to secure at least one win for Asgard's team. The fight began, and Thor was surprised by the old giantess's strength. The god used all his strength against the old lady, and at times, it appeared that the victory was in his hands. But the old woman managed to drop Thor to his knees. Defeated, the gods and their servant left the Utgaror palace, with their heads pointing down. The king of the giants followed the Asgardians to his kingdom's boundaries, and, when saying goodbye, he declared,
"Now that we're alone, I can tell you a secret. I have fooled you all along."
The king of the giants said that he had disguised himself as the giant Skrymir, the one who had guided Thor and his fellows through Jotunheimer. And, had he not had used magic at that moment, he would have been dead. After all, when Thor tried to hit his head with his hammer, the god hit a mountain instead, turning the hill into a valley.
"Dear Loki, you also have been deceived by an illusion. Actually, you were competing against a fire, and that fire engulfs everything in its path. You, Thjalfi, you competed against a thought, and even though you are extremely fast, nothing is faster than a thought." "And what sort of tricks did you use against me in your palace?" said Thor, demanding an explanation. "Now that we no longer have an audience, I can praise you for your strength and determination." The giant explained that the horn grabbed by Thor was connected to the ocean, so Thor was able to bring the sea level down a few meters, which was an incredible feat. As for the cat, he was actually lifting Jormungand, the world's serpent, and the mere fact that Thor could raise part of the snake off the ground was a huge accomplishment. Nevertheless, what stunned the giant the most was that Thor almost defeated the old woman, who was oldness itself, and time beats everyone down the road. Thor despised being tricked, and he would have crushed the giant, but he relied on his magic to vanish, along with his castle, for he feared the god's vengeance. The gods returned to Asgard. Thor knew that beating oldness or drinking all the water from the ocean was impossible, but defeating the world's snake was something he deemed feasible. And because of that, Thor started to wish to cross paths with Jormungand again, just to have the opportunity to beat it.